Bernard Crick, In Defense of Politics. In a world where globalization is often viewed with skepticism, In Defense of Politics by Bernard Crick dispels some popular misconceptions and presents a more balanced take on this controversial topic. The book acknowledges globalization's negative impacts, but emphasizes that the overall effects are positive, driving forces behind democracy and prosperity. The author presents intriguing examples, such as the impact of globalization on child labor, as well as its influence on environmental regulations, to provide readers with a thorough understanding of the issues at hand. Delving deep into these interconnected aspects, Crick's book is essential for anyone seeking to explore the other side of the globalization debate.
Globalization, a controversial phenomenon. Economic globalization has become a hotly debated topic, attracting both supporters and detractors. While some people hail it as a game-changer that promotes democracy, others call it unfair and accuse corporations of profit-hungry greed. However, the heated debates and violent protests that anti-globalization activists often stage overshadow the positive impact of globalization. For instance, despite a few downsides such as environmental harm caused by shrimp farming, globalization can generate economic growth, create jobs, and boost incomes. Additionally, the critics who blame globalization for economic insecurity or wage stagnation in developed countries are misinformed. Skilled workers can leverage technology to enhance their productivity and earning potential. Therefore, governments should manage the drawbacks of globalization instead of banning it. Globalization, fact versus fiction. Opponents of globalization often spread unfounded rumors about its negative impact on child labor, families, and cultural diversity. However, the New York Times found no evidence to support the claim that child slaves worked on cocoa plantations. In fact, international trade reduces child labor by increasing parental earnings and promoting education. Legislation banning child labor can have unintended consequences, as seen in the firing of 50,000 children from Bangladeshi garment factories. The theory of global care chains harming families in the developing world ignores the importance of extended families and the economic empowerment of absent mothers. Critics of globalization often fear American cultural domination, but in reality, America itself is becoming increasingly diverse. Overall, globalization accelerates the reduction of child labor and enhances education, while providing economic opportunities and cultural exchanges that benefit all nations. The truth about globalization. Opponents of globalization argue that it leads to a race to the bottom for workers in poor nations, while supporters see it as a race to the top. But evidence shows that multinationals actually pay about 10% more than local employers in poor countries, and by boosting demand for workers, these multinationals raise wage levels in the countries where they do business. Critics also claim that multinationals exploit workers and evade environmental regulations, but regulations in poor countries aren't always what they seem, and large corporations take pains to behave responsibly to avoid reputational damage. While it's true that sweatshops exist, multinationals are overwhelmingly likely to improve wages all around, thus improving the incomes of the workers in these countries. Managing globalization for all. In the book, it is argued that without proper management, international trade can have negative economic effects on developing nations. The Asian crisis of the late 1990s serves as an example of this. It is important for governments to implement safeguards to prepare for the transition to globalization. Managing globalization is complex, especially when it comes to short-term capital flows and immigration. The author proposes that the World Bank should fund adjustment assistance for workers in developing nations who might lose their jobs due to trade liberalization. Farmers are particularly vulnerable to the effects of international trade, and adjustment assistance should be available to them to avoid starvation. Slow transitions to globalization are the best approach to prevent economic turmoil and political unrest. The author also advocates for job security for workers who are willing to learn new skills, less specific education, and the establishment of a Grey Peace Corps to help address skill deficits in developing nations. The overall message is that globalization can bring benefits to all, but this requires proper management and support for vulnerable groups.
As we conclude our journey through the thought-provoking arguments presented in defense of politics, it becomes apparent that globalization, when managed effectively, can be a force for good. While it may not be perfect and is not without consequences, globalization has the power to promote democracy, alleviate child labor, and empower women in developing countries. However, it's crucial to remember that proper management and practical policies should be in place to ensure the benefits of globalization are reaped by all, without exploitation. In a world divided by conflicting opinions, Crick's book serves as an indispensable resource for understanding and assessing the complex realities behind globalization, encouraging us to make more informed decisions and contribute positively to the global community.